and to share with us. And today is our very last session. We're so sorry to see our insurance friends go, but we are going to give you some information on how you can contact them if you need some more information from them because they are always able to help you. We are having a presentation today here at the Literacy Services Department by Phoenix Insurance, and they have been so good to come and help us with our educational insurance series. Our first week we had the good, bad, and the uncovered. You might want to look this up on Facebook because these presentations are still out there on our page. The health insurance after COVID presentation was our second one. Medicare ABCs was our third. And today we are so excited to have Lori Rowe with us. And she is going to be telling us how to dispense our heirlooms and who is going to get Grandma's yellow pie plate. I noticed Grandma's yellow pie plate is not here today.
It has an apple pie in it.
She couldn't bring it because it has an apple pie in it. Anyway, we're so happy to be here with you all today, and we're so happy to have Lori with us. Lori Rowe is the president of Phoenix Insurance, which is Bartlesville's largest independent insurance agency. She holds a BA from the University of Tulsa and worked in public relations and journalism before becoming an administrator in the long-term care field. She has been the president of Phoenix Insurance for 19 years. And Phoenix Insurance covers home, auto, health, Medicare, life, and business insurance. And has been insuring area residents since 1926. We have some expertise here. So let's welcome Lori Rowe. But before we do, we need to thank the following for making this program possible: the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the Oklahoma Department of Libraries, and of course your Bartlesville Public Library. This is a literacy services presentation today. I'm all tongue-tied, but I know Lori won't be. So without further ado, may I present to you Lori Rowe.
Thank you, Joni, and thanks to my friends at the Bartlesville Public Library for having us for this insurance series. And you might not think insurance is the most enticing or exciting topic, but it certainly is one that affects our daily lives and helps us do our daily lives responsibly and safely, and helps us when we need those services. So I'm here today to talk to you about who gets Grandma's yellow pie plate. This is a program that was developed by the University of Minnesota Extension, and I was fascinated by it. I heard this presentation quite some time ago, years ago, and it's a guide to passing on your personal possessions. And that is your untitled property. Your title property are things like your house, your stocks, your bank accounts, your life insurance policies, those things that are included in your will. These are your untitled property, i.e. your personal possessions. And these are often ignored until there's a crisis or a death, which is very unfortunate because the passing on of these possessions are 5 times more likely to cause conflict than passing on your titled possessions. So why is it important to discuss this? You can already guess. These are items of personal value. They are historical, cultural, emotional, and financial. Historical, the candlestick that came over from the old world. Cultural, your background, your family, your history from which you came. Emotional, these are things that probably have been in your family for generations. And financial, I can guarantee you that Grandma's set of silver is definitely a financial consideration. These items represent the life of the person who currently owns them. The love, the trust, power, rituals, memories, and values. This is the giver's last word, if you will. The things that have been important to that person or persons that they've collected their entire lives. And so this is an opportunity for the giver to pass on items that have been the glue of the family, their family, for many years. Well, why would we avoid discussing such important items and topics? Well, first and foremost, nobody likes to talk about aging or death. It's a topic we really like to avoid. And we think, oh, I'll get around to it later. I'm too busy right now. Maybe you think it's disrespectful. How will I be perceived if I'm the one in my family to bring up, well, what's going to happen to these possessions? Who gets Grandma Martha's pearls? They may think that there's an ulterior motive there. A conflict potential, past or unspoken. I don't want to start something in the family. Or, we haven't heard from Sister Sue in a long time, and that's going to be very awkward to bring up this topic when Mom and Dad are still on the planet. Some families say, we don't have anything that's worth anything anyway. There's really nothing to talk about. I promise you, there is. The family won't agree. What happens if family members think, well, I should get the swing set, I'm the one that played on it, and my brother says, well, I should have the grandfather's clock because we picked it out together. So maybe you're afraid the family won't agree. Or what if nobody listens? I'm the youngest, who's going to listen to me? You don't want to ruin the holiday. You're sitting around the Thanksgiving table and you sure don't want to bring up a sore topic. It's not my role. That's somebody else's job. I'm going to let them deal with it. There's always family secrets. Sometimes I know a friend of mine had a family Bible, and as she was flipping through it, she saw the Star of David in there and came to realize that she was actually Jewish. So sometimes there are family secrets, liaisons that come to the forefront, families that we didn't know about. I know one person found out that they had 2 siblings that they were completely unaware of their whole lives. And sometimes it's just too much grief. I know in my family, I look at these things and I think, I really don't want to disperse these possessions. I want them to be here forever. I want you to be here forever. It's too hard to talk about. Well, why is it important to plan ahead? Peace of mind. I say planning ahead is better than dead. Kind of crude, but it gets the point across. It's the satisfaction of family continuity, of knowing that these things that have been passed down through generations, or that I have purchased, that I'm excited that my son and his fiance would like to have someday. That's thrilling to me. So it's the continuity of knowing that at some point, I know that those objects are still going to be loved and used. You can involve people in the process that you desire to have there. So that's a really important point. Sometimes after a crisis, when a person's no longer functioning, or after someone passes away, the people are dispersed and you don't have an opportunity perhaps to involve the people you'd like to involve. So that's an important aspect. Resolving potential or real conflicts. This is an opportunity to get those things out in the open. One of the things that I noticed over and over and over again in the long-term field is what we call unfinished business. And I can tell you it can get very ugly very quickly because these are things that were pushed under the rug until it was too late to resolve them. This allows you to have creative solutions and stay focused on the goals if you discuss it beforehand, before you have an event. You have more options and greater engagement. You can actually involve family and friends, the people you want to have be a part of it, and get stories going and get discussions going and remember when and all of those great memories. So it's an opportunity to really engage and have some fun. The samovar my mother bought in Mexico that my dad hauled all the way back to the US. Great stories get to be shared that perhaps were never heard or were forgotten. Actually, these discussions can enhance relationships and strengthen ties with the people that are involved. It's just a way to pull people together. And it's easier on those left behind. If we have these discussions in advance, it's easier because now we know the roadmap than waiting and just finding out at the end, we don't know what mom or dad wanted or Aunt Betty, and we're just trying to figure it out. Again, it's a celebration. It's a celebration of life and memories. I hauled this all the way back from Romania from a trip. That's an opportunity for me to talk about where I found it and how I had to carry it in my suitcase. This is a celebration of some of the adventures in my life. And if you're going to have a written distribution in advance that you've done in the quiet of your own library, be sure and date it and sign it. It's always nice to have it witnessed at least and have that be a part of your will, just so that the people who are going through your effects will know what you actually intended. If you wait, what happens? What you end up doing may not reflect what the giver would have actually wanted. It may cause misunderstandings and rifts. Sometimes families have been known to pilfer after the fact, and they knew right where grandmother's engagement ring, the carat diamond engagement ring, was hidden in a soft drawer, and they knew it and they took it. That happens. Sometimes families say, well, this isn't worth anything, I'll just throw it away, or they donate it. And then cousin Sarah comes in and says, but that was my favorite teddy bear. I wanted that. I didn't want that to be thrown away. That was my great-grandmother's, and we sat and told stories together at night. So sometimes items are lost that had a lot of personal meaning. And so you can lose the meaning and value if these things are undocumented, if you will. If this ends up in an estate sale, nobody knows the story behind that, and therefore, while it's a pretty object, it has lost its value and meaning. These things can create a crisis, yet another crisis. So you've had a situation where the person is no longer functional, or you've had a person who's actually passed away. So you have one crisis, and then you have another crisis of, now what in the world are we going to do with all of grandma's belongings? And that pie plate with the apple pie still in it. What are we going to do? It's yet another crisis. And then there are the someday promises. Sweetheart, someday that painting is going to be yours. Well, then Ralph comes in and grabs it, carts it off, and that someday promise is ruined. Sometimes families have gotten into lotteries or auctions. They pick straws. If everybody wants the grand piano, well, we'll just put our name in a hat and pick a name, and that's who gets it. Or actual auctions. Sometimes people will have to discuss what's of equal value. So those are things to consider. And of course, public sales, which a lot of us have been a part of. So what are the opportunities? Let's talk about the opportunities facing the giver, the person who wants to pass on these belongings meaningfully in a way that's valued. Well, the people to whom, let's say, she is giving them has a better understanding of her life. The trip to Romania, grandmother's pearls, the favorite teddy bear. Those people have a better understanding of the giver's life, and that's really important. I know a friend who helped older people get rid of their belongings, and she was going on and on and on, and the older person about these objects, because the children weren't there, they lived elsewhere, and this friend said, okay, are you ready to let go of that? And she said, please, let me tell the story, and then I can let go. So that's an opportunity for that person to at least verbalize the value and the meaning of those objects. The giver gets to decide what's fair and equitable. What's fair is not necessarily what's equitable. What is the value of silver versus the value of a diamond ring? But in terms of fairness, there is a decision to be made about how that would play out to the receivers. And the giver gets to make that decision. Again, it's the family continuity. Now, as we know, in these days and times, there are many family complexities, many divorces, remarriages, children, stepchildren, grandchildren, step-grandchildren, foster children, friends who are like family. This is an opportunity for the giver to involve the people that he or she would like to have be a part of this distribution of very personal objects. And I know for myself, I have said, you know, if you gave me something, I'd love for you to have it back because it was very meaningful to me. It was from you. And wouldn't it be wonderful if you knew that I wore this, that you gave me this beautiful amber necklace, but now you get to have it back and know that it was on me at one time. So the giver sometimes has his or her own motives or agendas. This doesn't always go the way one think it might, and maybe the giver is a little bit authoritarian and might decide that Johnny gets the gun collection when it was actually Jenny who wanted it, but the giver had his or her own agenda for deciding how to pass on those possessions. The giver can be afraid that the recipients might sell or give away the objects that they've been given. This is an issue that can face the giver, the gifter. A little bit of fear about, okay, well, I've passed them on, I wonder what they're going to do with them. And there are economic and emotional consequences. Again, it can either engage, or it can cause rifts, or it can destroy relationships. These are part of the issues that can face the giver. Well, what about the recipients? I have a full house. What am I going to do with that sofa? What am I going to do with great-grandmother's credenza? What am I going to do with the collection of costumes? What am I going to do with all of the paintings? The house is full. Or how about the spouse who says, I don't want that stuff in here, honey. Her style was totally different than ours, and I don't want it in here. We're full. What about a memory association? Sometimes it's just a little bit too close. It's a little bit too painful. I have a little piglet cup that was my great-grandmother's, and my mother, used to use it. I would lie down on the sink and she would wash my hair, and I was very tender-headed at the time. And she would take that little piglet and pour warm water over my hair to rinse out the soap. And so that's a very, very special memory for me. And I have that little piglet cup up in my kitchen shelf. So it's a very precious memory for me to have that object. And sometimes people have a different philosophy about things. Some people are very spare. I know one fellow who tore the shelves out of the house he and his wife were moving into because he didn't want stuff. He didn't want a bunch of knickknacks. And so sometimes philosophy is at issue. And then again, sometimes there's guilt associated with objects that the recipient gets. Like, well, I know everybody loved that grand piano, but I got it. And that's a big deal. So, wow. So some of the challenges in distribution are that it is hard to let go. It's hard to let go of items. And I will tell you, my mother thought it would be great fun for us 3 children and Dad to gather around the round table where we make all of our family decisions. And she said, we're going to have a tea and we're going to have some cake. And I want you children to go look around the room and decide the things that you would like to put your name on. And we said, that's not fun. And she said, oh, yes, it's going to be lots of fun. And my poor father was sitting there stricken kind of the whole time. And so we dutifully went about putting little tape on the paintings and the items around the room. And my sweet father finally said, you know, it's taken me my whole life to accumulate these things, and you've given them away in 15 minutes. So again, it's hard to let go. The preservation of family memories, history, and rituals. When you do disperse those items, now they are not in one complete egg nest, but they are still there. So those are some of the challenges. And again, determining what's fair. If you get the piano, do I get the swing set? And if you get the silver, do I get the diamond ring? What is fair? And again, usually the giver, if you discuss this in advance, gets to help make those decisions. Because again, it's who is going to determine the worth and value. If you've waited till afterwards, then you get into, was it the eldest? Is it the person who lived here and took care of mom and dad? Who gets to decide what's fair and equitable and who gets what? Is it an equal number? Is it equal value? Do you have an equal chance to put your name in the hat for that item? And then again, do you involve the spouse? If your mother remarried and had a spouse, do you involve that? How is that person involved? How are stepchildren involved? Blended families, mine and ours and his and theirs and ours and so forth. How are those people involved? Stepchildren, again, children by marriage but not by blood. And then one item to think about is that the value changes over time. What might have been valuable no longer is, or vice versa. What was not of much value is of value now because of the emotional attachment. And so again, when you're involving children, who's making the decision about who gets what? I was just delighted that I actually got to grab one of my grandfather's very sharp kitchen knives, old steel with a wooden handle, you know, the kind that rusts if you don't dry it. And he was very reluctant to let it go, but he had a drawer full. But having grown up in the Depression, before the Depression, he valued everything he had. And my grandmother said, "Oh, honey, let that baby have that knife if she wants it." Well, after he passed away, the family there in Texas really split up a lot of those things, and I would never have had an opportunity to have that knife. And my brother and my male cousin split up a lot of the tools because it was kind of considered a male thing. Well, I would love to have had a hammer, you know, but it worked out fine. It's just one of those things about, again, how do you hopefully gently make these decisions? So how do we initiate the conversation? It's, guess what, mostly females. Men, again, don't like to talk about aging or death at all. They think they're never going to die. So it's usually women who bring up the conversation about how to approach what is fun to some, but sometimes difficult to others. And so you look for natural opportunities. Probably at the Thanksgiving table is not the best time to bring these things up, but maybe afterwards, if you're in the living room and you're talking about stories and you say, "Hey, you know, tell me that story again about that iron urn. Where did that come from?" And then you can segue into perhaps a story while the kids and grandkids are in the other room playing. Again, getting people involved, getting the buy-in of the people who are going to be a part of this process. Everyone, as we said, from soup to nuts, from blood to marriage to steps to fosters to cousins to friends. Sometimes friends are very important and just as important as family. We all know we can't choose our family, but we can choose those who feel like family. And so sometimes that's a very respectful thing to do, to involve friends who were like family to the giver, or who are still like family to the giver. And again, use I messages. You never came around and I'm the one, I don't mean that, I'm the one that took care of mom and dad, you shouldn't have this. We'd rather use I messages. It's really important to me. I love this piece. I would love to have this because while I was caring for mom and dad, I know you had your own life and choices, but while I've been here, we've used this every day. And I would love to have this, and how about would this be as meaningful to you to have that? So we remember to keep the I messages going in these conversations. And when we're discussing these things beforehand, sometimes it might be helpful to say the what if scenarios. You know, what if something happened? I would rather that we go through this now than afterwards. If mom or dad or Aunt Jerry were incapacitated or suddenly passed away, you know, then it would make it really difficult. I know that we're just gathered together for this short time, but I would really love it if we could just take 1 hour and just discuss this amongst ourselves and share stories. Stories are what it's all about. Setting an agenda, if you can, and make it a little more formal. Sometimes it's good to set an agenda so again you stay focused on the goals. What is the desired outcome? It's always preserving the memories and the continuity of the family. So these are, again, you can set the goals and you can veer off and gently pull it back to what your goals are, setting ground rules. One person should not monopolize the conversation if it's the eldest or the youngest or the one that's been here or the one that's farther away. Take turns, even if you have to have a talking stick where the person who is holding the stick gets to talk. You can time it. Sometimes I've done that in discussions that where we know it's going to go on too long. I have the talking stick. I put on a timer for 3 minutes. When the 3 minutes are over, I stop and pass the talking stick. So that's a good way to keep the conversation going. And respect if the person or people are not ready to have these discussions. This is something that might have been in your mind for a while, but your brother who lives in Hawaii, who's been just in a totally different world and is married for the second time with 8 kids, hasn't been in the same mindset. And if he comes home and it just says, I'm not ready for this, that's okay. Let that be. Respect each other and agree to manage your conflicts, agree to manage your differences. That's very, very important. It's the most important and the least important results. The most important results are the family continuity. The least important results really and truly are niggling about who really gets. Are you going to divide up the silverware? Is it going to come down to that you get the forks, you get the spoons, and you get the knives? That doesn't make any sense. So managing your conflicts well, and again, being respectful. So don't assume that there are right answers, that because you are birth order or you're male or female, or you deserve it because you were here. Don't make assumptions about that. Try to take into account that if Jack is going to get the sectional sofa and lives in Florida, that might be hard for him to transport, but it would be easy for him to have the candlestick and put it in his suitcase. Maybe one person really is in less financially stable situation, so sometimes it's nice to consider that rather than a person who is more affluent and who's made different choices in life. So that can be a factor in considering decisions. Again, marital status, personal interest in the items. You know, if you just hand somebody something they have no interest in, that's probably not going to be very endearing. Contributions. You know, if one person has been a big financial contributor to mom and dad living here, maybe that person does have a little bit more weight in the discussions. They may not care to, it may not matter. So agree to settle conflicts. At the bottom line, it's not worth the loss of your family. It's just stuff. You can't take it with you. Even when you pass it on, they are going to have to distribute it at some point along the way. The most important thing of all is the memories, the most valuable gifts you and your family can give to each other. Share stories and share the love. Thank you.
Lori, we have a little bit of time. Thank you so much for spending so much of your time telling us about all of these wonderful ways to dispense the heirlooms. I had a couple of questions for you, basically because I had just had an experience not long ago. I think we talked about this last year too, but having some elderly people still alive in my life, we have had to process some of these things. What do you suggest to people if somebody in the family has high expectations for the family wanting certain things and the family is not all that excited about having it? Now, you mentioned that just a little bit, but do you have any ways you can resolve some of those things that help the elderly person feel like you care about their life, you care about their memories, but the thing that they have attached to the memory is maybe not as important to you as it is to them, and you don't have room for that thing in your house. How do you handle that?
So I would say there are more than two options, but the two that perhaps are most obvious to me would be, the first would be to graciously accept it and clap and be joyful, and after the person passes, pass it along, whatever it is. If it is the sectional or a whole, something that you just don't have room for, another option might be to say, Mom, I know that this is really important to you, and it's really important to me too, but we truly do not have, we've downsized ourselves, and we truly don't have a place for it. But what is really meaningful to me is this piece. This piece, I know right where I'm going to put it.
Right.
I'm going to put it on my bedside table, and I'm going to get rid of a couple of things that I bought that were important to me, but I'm going to get rid of a couple of things and have this one really meaningful object from you, so that when I get out of bed every morning, I'm looking at that very special object or objects.
So basically what you're saying is making a valuable substitution.
Yes.
Something that they also value that you might prefer to have that you
Right.
can substitute.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And you might be able to say, Mom, what I would like to talk with you about is, I love everything the way you put it. It's you. It's the house that I come into that I have known. And all of this is meaningful to me. But I'm going to have to make some personal decisions about what I can absorb. And really and truly, Jack and I have talked about it, and we feel we can really absorb 3 pieces. So if you would choose the 3 pieces that you had in mind for us that were the most meaningful, which 3 would they be? Well, the sofa, the credenza, and the piano. Well, Mom, I don't have room for the sofa, the credenza, and the piano. But how about this crystal bowl that you and Dad brought from Europe?
Right. Wonderful. Okay. And another thought that I had, sometimes these decisions have to be made well before the person dies.
Correct.
Because
ideally,
in our present world, there is downsizing. So many people downsize. So you might be in a situation where this particular family member is leaving their home in order to go to a facility where they can be with other friends, where they don't have to make their own food, and that downsizing process starts earlier than death. So they have to begin to make those decisions, and you have to begin to know how to handle it. And it is a very, very touchy situation. I know this from just having gone through this again just of late, and trying to make the right substitutions, trying to interest certain family members in certain pieces so that the family member feels like their things are valued.
Yes.
And so anyway, it's just such a wonderful conversation to have in advance, that it's not a difficult one. I mean, it will be a difficult one.
It can
probably
be. I mean, again, Mom made it fun, and fun for her. And what it did was it brought up a lot of the memories of where these objects came from, and where Dad was when he saw that painting in New York, and what gallery he bought it in. And so that again gives you the opportunity to go through those stories. Now, I helped my grandparents move from Texas to Oklahoma, to Bartlesville, to an assisted living facility, and it really it did pretty much finish my granddad. He just couldn't make the transition. My grandmother, again, we females have to kind of usually go along in the boat. And what we ended up doing was, we had a sale in Texas of the objects we knew, the 8 iron skillets that had belonged to her mother. Iron skillets. I mean, they just, they weigh a ton. And we got rid of things we knew were either not as historically important to them, or we knew wouldn't fit because we'd already picked out the unit. And so we knew those things weren't going to fit. So what we chose was, for instance, her mother's settee instead of the modern leather one. Her mother's velvet and cane-backed settee, so that would bring that continuity forward. And the photographs, for instance, I made, I think, 8 collages of photographs that we hung down the hallway all through the years, and friends and family and memories, and so that as they went down the hall of their new place, we brought those memories with us. The one little tiny little object that my granddad's mother had given him and he cherished, we brought that. So what we did was it was when a person is moving like that, it is very difficult emotionally as well as physically.
Yeah.
And sometimes that person kind of goes into a other planet place because they just can't absorb the shock of it.
It's too much loss.
It's too
They're
much
losing
loss.
their place. They're losing their connection to where those things have been placed in their home, and
Right.
then they may have to give
independence.
away many of their prized possessions in order
Right.
to fit in the new place. It's
Right.
it's extremely traumatic.
It is, and yet, we made it the best we could because it's like anything else, as we are winding down, it's not nearly as much fun as when we were born and gearing up.
Right.
But we can make it the best we can, and that's the best we can do. And so if what's difficult, I think can be difficult, is if the person is just kicking and screaming and pushing and so forth. But if you can find a place of grace and of acceptance, those are also the conversations that are prompted by this. Mom, I know that this is hard for you because this is the home where you and Daddy lived. And I know this is really tough and it's hard on us too. And we're going to try to make this the smoothest and the best we can. And we're so grateful you have some friends there. And we're going to bring the things that are very most meaningful to you to help you feel at home. And so those are the conversations about, I'm so relieved that you're getting meals and that you're having the comfort and the safety, Mom, that you didn't have before. And so that's sometimes sort of cheap talk when you're the one going through it, but those conversations are a part of the objects.
Absolutely. And Lori, at Phoenix Insurance, do you all have a counseling room?
We do. It's my dad's office.
Wonderful person.
My dad's office.
Absolutely.
Yes,
He was
yes.
a wonderful counselor.
He was.
Well, we're so excited that Lori is sharing this with us today because this is a difficult subject. And we know that many of you out there are facing that possibly in your own lives or in your parents' lives or in Uncle Joe's life or Aunt Susie's life. And just knowing that somebody has gone before you, is making some suggestions that might make it easier, understands the process. We just wanted to bring this presentation today, and I know many of you enjoyed it last year, and we hope that many of you enjoyed it this year. So we are so thankful to Phoenix Insurance for our educational insurance series. We've enjoyed it so much.
Thank you, Joni.
You're wonderful presenters, always so gracious. And please do, if you have an insurance question, give them a call at Phoenix Insurance. They'll be glad to help you. And thank you for joining us here today at Literacy Services at the Bartlesville Public Library. We want to thank the Institute of Museum and Library Services, the Oklahoma Department of Libraries, and of course, your Bartlesville Public Library for sponsoring this program. So since I messed up that word, I'll have to tell you this story. I may have messed up that word because I was telling the story about my little granddaughter who always said, "It's my library, it's my library." So we want to be your library too. So we are thankful to the Bartlesville Public Library for helping us present the Educational Insurance Series. We'll see you later. Bye-bye. Awesome. Oh, God.